The gaslights of Boston's Beacon Hill cast dancing shadows on wet cobblestones outside the Dalton family mansion. I press my forehead against the frosted window of my cab, watching yellow light spill from the tall windows. Steam rises from my coffee cup while the driver counts his tip twice. Inside, the mahogany-paneled dining room glows with candlelight. Crystal glasses catch flame and throw tiny rainbows across starched linens. The scent of roasted turkey mingles with old money and older resentments. I take my usual seat at the far end of the polished table, the one that makes it clear I'm family but not really family. Cynthia Dalton rises for her annual Christmas toast. At 50, she still carries herself like the debutante she was 30 years ago. Her pearl necklace catches light as she lifts her wine glass. It has been 7 long years since my mother Beatrice passed. The room falls silent except for Arthur's knife scraping against bone as he carves his prime rib. Griffin fidgets with his napkin. Felicity stares into her wine like it holds answers. And I still firmly believe that a true family fortune should belong to true family. Blood relatives, not outsiders. Cynthia's eyes find mine across the gleaming table. The words land like a slap. But at least the Dalton legacy, this company, will always belong to actual Dalton blood, not to outsiders. I set my wine glass down with careful precision. My hands don't shake. They never shake during family dinners anymore. Arthur grunts approval while sawing through his meat. A legacy that won't last another year if that vulture Julian Hayes and his LHT fund keep strangling us in the boardroom. Felicity nods with theatrical drama, her blonde curls bouncing. He blocked Griffin's promotion again last week. It's like he wants the company to fail. Griffin pounds the table hard enough to make silverware jump. Hayes treats us like criminals in our own boardroom. That LHT loan is killing us with their oversight. I maintain my gentle smile, sipping wine while my adoptive family tears apart the man I hired to protect my investment. The irony tastes better than the vintage Bordeaux. 7 years earlier, Beatrice Fairchild's lawyer had read the shocking will in this very room. $90 million in investment portfolios left entirely to adopted granddaughter Evelyn Wright. The family's fury had been immediate and spectacular. Arthur's panicked admission that Dalton Manufacturing faced bankruptcy within months. My private meeting with financial advisor Julian Hayes 3 days later had been brief and decisive. I don't want to own their company. I want them indebted to me. Create an anonymous trust. Loan them exactly what they need. Put yourself on their board to protect the investment. The LHT trust formation had taken 6 weeks. $90 million flowing to Dalton Manufacturing as a secured loan against every company asset. The family's desperate gratitude when Julian Hayes appeared as their mysterious savior. He never revealed his true employer. For 7 years, I've watched them call my protector a vulture while living off my inheritance. Every board meeting Julian attended, every oversight vote that saved them from their own incompetence, funded by the money they believe I don't deserve. Blood is important, I say softly, my voice carrying new steel. But so is gratitude, and respect, and remembering who stands by you when everything falls apart. Cynthia's laugh cuts like crystal breaking. Oh, Evelyn, always so philosophical. You wouldn't understand the pressure of carrying a real family legacy. The words settle like winter air through the room. I feel something shift behind my dark eyes. After 30 years of being the grateful outsider, clarity replaces confusion. The adopted girl desperately seeking approval dies quietly in her chair. You're absolutely right, Aunt Cynthia. I wouldn't understand that particular pressure. Arthur waves his fork dismissively. The company built this family's reputation. 4 generations of Dalton men ran that factory. But now some anonymous fund thinks they can tell us how to run our own business. Griffin's voice cracks with indignation. LHT won't even tell us who they represent. Just hide behind lawyers and corporate shell games. Cowards, Felicity adds, refilling her glass. Real business people show their faces. I study their faces across the candlelit table. Cynthia's sharp cheekbones, Arthur's receding hairline, Griffin's weak chin, Felicity's entitled pout. These people took my grandmother's love, my childhood loyalty, my adult generosity, and threw it back in my face every Christmas for 7 years. They've made their position clear. I'm an outsider. The money Beatrice left me belongs to blood family. The company should never be controlled by someone like me. The decision forms like ice crystallizing in winter air. Clean, sharp, irreversible. Tomorrow morning, I'll call Julian Hayes from my Commonwealth Avenue apartment. Through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Common, I'll give him new instructions. 7 years of protection end now. The 7-year loan, Julian. It's time for renewal negotiations. But there won't be any negotiations. I'll call the note. Demand payment in full within 45 days. They don't have $90 million in cash. Their only assets are already collateralized to LHT. To me, default is certain. Foreclosure is guaranteed. The family will lose everything. Cynthia raises her glass again. To family blood and family legacy. to keeping what belongs to us in the right hands. I lift my wine glass and smile, to getting exactly what you ask for. The toast echoes around the mahogany table. Crystal chimes against crystal. Outside, snow begins to fall on Beacon Hill, covering the cobblestones in pristine white. By spring, the Dalton family legacy will belong to someone new, someone they called an outsider, someone who learned that blood may be thicker than water, but debt is thicker than blood. They wanted blood family only. Tomorrow, they'll discover what happens when the outsider stops protecting them from themselves. The next morning arrives gray and cold through my Commonwealth Avenue apartment windows. Boston Common stretches white with fresh snow, the kind that makes footprints look like accusations against pristine silence. I hold my coffee cup with both hands, letting steam warm my face while I stare at the cardinal perched on my window ledge, bright red against all that white. My phone sits on the marble countertop. Julian Hayes' number is already highlighted on the screen. One call changes everything. 7 years of protection end with a single conversation. I press dial. Julian. His voice carries the crisp efficiency of a man who's spent decades managing other people's crises. I expected to hear from you this morning. The 7-year loan, Julian. It's time for renewal negotiations. The pause stretches long enough for me to count the cardinal's tiny breaths fogging against cold glass. When Julian speaks again, his tone has shifted from polite professionalism to careful attention. 7 years of working together taught him to read the spaces between my words. They're assuming automatic renewal at the same terms. Arthur mentioned it will be routine paperwork. No. The word comes out steady as January wind. We are not renewing. Call the note. Demand payment in full within 45 days. Silence fills the line while Julian's financial mind calculates implications. He doesn't ask why. After last night's Christmas dinner, explanations are unnecessary. The Dalton family drew their battle lines clearly enough. Evelyn, they don't have 90 million in cash. His voice carries the weight of 7 years watching their entitled incompetence drain company resources. Their only assets are already collateralized to us. Default is certain. We'll be legally required to foreclose. I understand completely. The company will enter Chapter 7 bankruptcy within 45 days. The family will lose everything. The cardinal tilts its head, studying my reflection in the window. Such a small creature to survive Boston winters. Such fierce determination packed into fragile bones. And Julian, when you send the demand letter, make certain they understand exactly who LHT represents. Another pause. Longer this time. You want them to know. I want them to understand exactly who they've been calling a vulture. After hanging up, I walk to my laptop and open the secure folder Julian maintains for my review. 7 years of board meeting minutes from Dalton Manufacturing. Every vote. Every decision blocked by LHT's oversight authority. Every instance where Julian Hayes prevented the family from destroying what 4 generations built. Arthur's proposed corporate jet purchase. $12 million for weekend trips to Martha's Vineyard while factory equipment needed repairs. Vote blocked by LHT representative Julian Hayes. Griffin's attempt to fire plant manager David Miller and replace him with his fraternity brother, a competent 20-year employee sacrificed for nepotism. Vote blocked by LHT representative Julian Hayes. Cynthia's pressure to relocate manufacturing overseas, eliminating 400 local jobs to boost quarterly profits. Vote blocked by LHT representative Julian Hayes. Every destructive impulse stopped by my anonymous protection. Every decision that would have destroyed worker livelihoods prevented by money they called mine illegitimately. 7 years of saving them from themselves while being called an outsider who doesn't understand family pressure. My phone buzzes with Julian's confirmation text. Demand letter prepared, legal team standing by. Shall I include the LHT trust documentation revealing your ownership? I type back without hesitation. Include everything. They deserve to understand exactly who they've been calling a vulture. 2 hours later, Julian calls with an update that surprises no one who's watched the Dalton family operate. Arthur's first reaction was panic. He called Boston Trust immediately asking for a bridge loan. They refused within 90 seconds. Of course they did. LHT owns everything, Evelyn. The factory, equipment, real estate, inventory, even their office furniture is pledged as collateral. No bank will lend 90 million against assets already promised to another creditor. Through my window, the cardinal has flown away. Only tiny claw marks remain in the snow on my ledge. Evidence of survival against impossible odds. What about Cynthia? According to Arthur's secretary, she screamed loud enough to crack crystal when he told her, then locked herself in the library with a bottle of scotch and their family lawyer's business card. And the children? Griffin and Felicity are apparently making desperate calls to every wealthy contact in their social circle, asking for emergency loans their trust funds can't possibly secure. The irony tastes better than my morning coffee. After 30 years of being reminded I don't belong to their blood family, they're discovering what life looks like without my protection. The competent oversight they called strangling was the only thing preventing complete collapse. Julian's legal team works with surgical precision assembling the documentation package. The $90 million loan agreement with its ironclad terms, security interests in every Dalton manufacturing asset filed with Massachusetts Secretary of State, personal guarantees signed by Arthur in desperate gratitude 7 years ago. Most importantly, the LHT Trust Charter, the Fairchild Fund organizational structure, the beneficiary designation that spells out exactly who controls their financial lifeline. Evelyn Wright, sole owner and controlling party. The package will arrive at Dalton Manufacturing by certified mail, signature required. Arthur Dalton's trembling hands will sign for documents that destroy everything he thinks he owns. By tomorrow morning, they'll understand that their mysterious vulture has a face they've seen at every Christmas dinner for 7 years. The outsider who doesn't deserve family inheritance will reveal herself as the family inheritance they've been living off. The woman they called grateful will show them what real gratitude looks like when it stops flowing in their direction. Outside my window, new snow begins falling on Commonwealth Avenue. Clean white covering yesterday's footprints. By spring, the Dalton family legacy will wear a different name. Blood relatives only, Aunt Cynthia. Starting tomorrow, you'll get exactly what you asked for. The next morning, Arthur Dalton's hands shake as he reads Julian Hayes' demand letter in his corner office overlooking Boston Harbor. The mathematical brutality is clear. $90 million due in full within 45 days, now 44 or immediate foreclosure on all company assets. The words blur together on expensive letterhead. Payment in full. No extensions. Default triggers immediate asset seizure. He reaches for his phone with trembling fingers. His first call is to his primary banker at Boston Trust. The conversation lasts exactly 90 seconds. Arthur, I've already seen the filing. LHT owns everything. We can't lend $90 million against assets already promised to them. The banker's voice carries the clinical detachment of someone cutting off a drowning man. You're radioactive until this resolves. The line goes dead. Arthur stares at the harbor where cargo ships move like toys in the distance. His second call is to Cynthia. Her scream echoes through the mansion's marble halls when he reads her the demand letter over the phone. The emergency family meeting convenes that evening at the mansion. Cynthia paces the Persian rug like a caged lioness, while Arthur slumps in his father's leather chair. The chair seems to swallow him whole. Felicity and Griffin huddle together on the sofa, with lawyers' business cards scattered across the coffee table like losing lottery tickets. Every bank in New England refuses to touch us, Arthur reports, his CEO voice cracking. Hayes has us in a legal stranglehold. The security agreements cover everything. The factory, equipment, inventory, real estate. Even our company cars. Griffin's voice cracks with disbelief. How did LHT get this kind of control? We signed that loan 7 years ago to save the company. It was supposed to be routine business financing. Cynthia stops pacing. Her heels click against hardwood as she turns toward the scattered documents. The trust documents. Did anyone actually read who owns LHT? Hayes keeps dodging the question every time we ask. Arthur's secretary had delivered a second package that afternoon. Supplemental documentation, Hayes had called it. The LHT Trust Charter sits unopened on the coffee table like a live grenade. Felicity reaches for it first. Her manicured fingers tear through the legal seal. The pages rustle as she spreads them across polished mahogany. Corporate structure, trust formation, tax classifications. Then the final page, the beneficiary designation that changes everything. Evelyn Wright, sole owner and controlling party. The silence stretches like a held breath. Clock hands move on the mantelpiece. Outside, car doors slam on Beacon Hill. Then Felicity's voice, barely a whisper. That's Grandma's money. Our money. Cynthia's face transforms from confusion to pure rage. Color drains from her cheeks, then floods back in angry patches. She's been controlling Julian Hayes this entire time. Every board vote. Every decision. That little outsider has been playing puppet master with our family company for 7 years. Arthur's phone buzzes with a text message. Unknown number. Board meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m. Attendance mandatory. JH. The next afternoon, the emergency board meeting convenes in Dalton Manufacturing's cramped conference room. Fluorescent lights hum overhead. The scarred oak table bears coffee stains from decades of family meetings. Arthur, Cynthia, Felicity, and Griffin occupy one side like defendants in a trial. Julian Hayes sits opposite, his leather portfolio closed, hands folded with surgical precision. We know who you work for. Cynthia hisses across the table. We know about LHT. About her. Julian's expression never changes. His steel gray eyes remain fixed on some point above their heads. Then you understand your situation clearly. Arthur leans forward desperately, his palms sweating against the table surface. There has to be a solution. Some kind of payment plan. Extended terms. We've worked together for 7 years. The loan terms were quite generous. 7 years at below market rates. LHT protected this company's interests while you focused on other priorities. Meanwhile, across town at Dalton Manufacturing's factory floor, plant manager David Miller receives an unexpected call from Julian Hayes. Steam rises from coffee assembly lines, where 400 workers build precision components. David, I need you to understand something. LHT values competent management. Whatever happens with ownership changes, your position is secure. David's 20-year career at Dalton has taught him to read corporate tea leaves. He's survived 3 recessions and 2 hostile takeover attempts. Mr. Hayes, should I be concerned about the company's future? The company will survive, under new ownership, with better leadership. Back in the conference room, Julian produces a second folder from his portfolio. Documents spill across the table like evidence in a murder trial. Board meeting minutes from the past 7 years. LHT's vote blocked your proposed corporate jet purchase. $12 million. Prevented Griffin's termination of David Miller. Stopped the overseas manufacturing relocation that would have eliminated 400 local jobs. Each document lands on the table with deliberate precision. Arthur's signature on the jet proposal. Griffin's termination memo for Miller. Cynthia's cost-cutting presentation advocating foreign labor. LHT has been the adult supervision in this boardroom. That supervision is ending. LHT. Griffin's face turns crimson. You had no right. Miller should have been fired years ago. My recommendations could have saved this company millions. Julian's voice remains level as winter wind. Your recommendations would have destroyed worker loyalty and product quality. LHT prevented those mistakes. The conference room door opens without warning. Evelyn Wright enters wearing a navy business suit, her dark hair pulled back in a professional chignon. Her heels click against linoleum as she moves with quiet authority to take the seat beside Julian Hayes. She places her hands flat on the scarred table. "Good afternoon, family," she says, her voice carrying the calm of someone who holds all the cards. "I believe it's time we discussed your loan." The shock in the conference room is electric. Arthur's mouth opens and closes soundlessly while Cynthia grips her pearls until her knuckles whiten. Felicity whispers, "Oh my God," repeatedly like a broken prayer. Outside the factory windows, snow begins to fall on the Boston skyline. 43 days remain before the loan comes due. $90 million they don't have. Assets they can't liquidate. A family company slipping through their fingers like sand. The adopted granddaughter they called an outsider sits perfectly still, waiting for their response. The shock in the conference room is electric. Arthur's mouth opens and closes soundlessly like a fish pulled from water. Cynthia grips her pearls until her knuckles whiten, the expensive strand cutting into her palm. Felicity watches in bewilderment. Griffin finds his voice first, jumping to his feet so hard his chair scrapes against linoleum. "You can't do this! You can't just destroy a company. The courts won't allow it." His face flushes red as Christmas ribbon. "Grandma Beatrice would never have wanted you to destroy the family company." I open my briefcase with deliberate calm. The leather clasps click like small bones breaking. "The courts are very clear on this, Griffin. They always side with the secured creditor. And Grandma Beatrice left her money to me. I place documents on the table with surgical precision. She trusted my judgment, not yours." The bankruptcy projections from 7 years ago spread across the scarred oak surface. Numbers don't lie the way family does. These are the financial reports from when Arthur came begging for help. Without our loan, Dalton Manufacturing would have closed permanently. Cynthia's voice shakes with fury and disbelief. "You manipulated everything. You've been pulling Hayes' strings this whole time, controlling our business, our family. I provided capital when you needed it most." My voice carries the weight of 7 years of careful planning. I ensured competent oversight when family management proved insufficient. I protected 400 jobs when your cost-cutting measures would have eliminated them. Arthur tries a different approach, his CEO voice returning like muscle memory. "Evelyn, we can work together. Your family. We can restructure the loan terms, bring you officially onto the board." My smile feels like winter wind across my face. At Christmas dinner, Cynthia made it very clear that family fortunes belong to blood relatives only, that outsiders don't belong. I fold my hands on the table. "I'm simply respecting your wishes." The silence stretches like a held breath. Arthur's Adam's apple bobs as he swallows hard. Felicity stares at the foreclosure documents like they're written in a foreign language. Cynthia attempts her final manipulation, her voice dripping false sweetness thick as corn syrup. "Evelyn, darling, family disagreements happen. Emotions run high during holidays. She leans forward with practiced charm. What if we made you an official partner? 30% ownership in exchange for new loan terms? 50%, Arthur counters quickly, desperation cracking his executive facade. Equal partners. I stand, closing my briefcase with a sharp snap that echoes through the room. 7 years ago, you accepted LHT's $90 million gratefully. You signed personal guarantees against every company asset. My voice remains conversational, which makes it more devastating. You promised Julian Hayes full board oversight privileges. Griffin slumps back into his chair. Cynthia's fake smile crumbles like old plaster. At Christmas dinner, you called me an outsider who doesn't deserve family inheritance. Today, you want me as a partner. I move toward the door, my heels clicking against worn linoleum. Which position reflects your true feelings? Felicity tries one last desperate gambit, her voice cracking. We'll give you whatever you want. Full control. Just don't destroy the company Dad built. I pause with my hand on the doorknob. Your father didn't build this company. Your grandfather did. Your father has been running it into the ground for a decade. The truth cuts through the room like January wind. Julian's board oversight prevented complete collapse. Arthur's face goes gray as old concrete. Evelyn, please. Think of the workers, the families who depend on those jobs. I've protected those jobs for 7 years while you focused on corporate jets and nepotistic hiring. I turn the handle. You have 43 days to secure alternative financing. I suggest you start immediately. As the family sits in stunned silence, Julian Hayes distributes final documents with the efficiency of an undertaker. These are the foreclosure procedures and timeline. LHT will assume operational control if default occurs. His voice carries no emotion. All current management contracts will be terminated, except David Miller, who will become Chief Operating Officer under new ownership. He stands to follow me, gathering his leather portfolio. The company will survive this transition. Under competent leadership, it may even prosper. His eyes sweep the defeated faces around the table. The question is whether current ownership will survive. The moment we leave the conference room, the Dalton family's unity explodes into chaos. Through the thin walls, their voices carry clearly into the hallway. Griffin's voice rises first, sharp with accusation. Your blood relative's speech triggered this. She was ready to let sleeping dogs lie. Cynthia's response crackles with defensive anger. How was I supposed to know she controlled LHT? She's been sitting at our table for 7 years playing the grateful orphan. Arthur's voice carries the weight of a man watching his legacy crumble. We need solutions, not blame. Who do we know with 90 million in liquid assets? The question hangs in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Cynthia's voice cracks with the realization of social humiliation ahead. Everyone will know. The whole Boston social scene will watch our family lose everything to that adopted little nobody. Felicity starts crying, her sobs muffled but audible. 20 years from now, business school case studies will cover how we lost a century-old company because we couldn't keep our mouths shut at Christmas dinner. Julian and I walk through the factory floor toward the exit. Workers move between machinery with the steady rhythm of competent labor. These people deserve better than the entitled incompetence that's been governing their livelihoods. David Miller will make an excellent chief operating officer. Julian observes as we pass the plant manager's office. Through the window, I see David reviewing production schedules, his gray hair bent over paperwork that actually matters. He's spent 20 years keeping this place running despite family interference. Under new ownership, he'll finally receive the authority his competence deserves. Outside in the parking lot, December air cuts through my coat. Boston's skyline rises in the distance, glass and steel monuments to serious business, conducted by serious people. The Dalton family's amateur hour ends in 43 days. They'll try everything now, Julian says, unlocking his Mercedes. Emotional manipulation, legal challenges, desperate partnership offers. I slide into my own car, turning the key with steady fingers. Let them try. 7 years ago, they signed documents giving LHT complete security over every asset. They have no leverage left. Through my rearview mirror, I watch the Dalton manufacturing building grow smaller. Inside, 4 generations of family legacy transforms into 43 days of countdown. The arithmetic is simple and final. They wanted blood family only. Tomorrow, they'll discover what happens when the outsider stops protecting them from themselves. Day 38 of the 45-day countdown arrives gray and bitter. Snow melts in dirty rivulets down Commonwealth Avenue while my phone buzzes with Cynthia's incoming call. I let it ring twice before answering, watching the morning news ticker scroll Dalton Manufacturing's latest stock price collapse across my laptop screen. Darling. Cynthia's voice trembles with manufactured sweetness that fools no one, least of all me. I've been reflecting on Christmas dinner. I may have spoken harshly. Family stress, you understand. Could we possibly meet, privately, to discuss a family solution to this terrible misunderstanding? I check my calendar app while the financial reporter discusses distressed manufacturing assets and potential bankruptcy scenarios. The irony tastes better than my morning coffee. I'm sorry, Aunt Cynthia. I don't see how that would help. Her pause stretches long enough for me to hear Arthur's voice in the background, coaching her through this desperate performance. Please, I know Beatrice left you some resources. Could you possibly lend the family 10 million, just to tide us over while we restructure? You are a Dalton after all. The desperation in her voice is perfect. After 7 years of calling me an outsider, Cynthia now needs the Dalton name to justify emergency financial help. Blood family suddenly includes adopted granddaughters when bankruptcy looms large. That's not possible. I reply, my voice carrying the same polite distance she's shown me for decades. Good luck with your restructuring efforts. I hang up and speed dial Julian Hayes. He answers on the first ring, his voice crisp with professional efficiency. Status report? Zero progress on alternative financing. 3 banks refused them this week. Arthur hired a bankruptcy attorney yesterday from Morrison & Associates. They're out of moves, Evelyn. Completely out of moves. I close my laptop and walk to the window overlooking Boston Common. Joggers move along snow-dusted paths while dogwalkers navigate icy sidewalks. Normal people living normal lives while the Dalton family legacy crumbles 45 blocks away. Thank you, Julian. I'll see you at 9 a.m. sharp. Day 45 arrives like inevitable morning. I dress in my sharpest navy business suit, the one that projects authority without apology. My reflection in the hallway mirror shows a woman who no longer seeks approval from people incapable of offering respect. Dalton Manufacturing's final board meeting convenes at 9 a.m. in their cramped conference room with its scarred oak table and flickering fluorescent lights. Arthur Dalton slumps in his chair like a defeated general, his face gray with stress and sleepless nights. Cynthia sits ramrod straight, her pearl necklace catching light as she clutches her purse. Felicity and Griffin huddle together in funeral silence, their usual banter replaced by hollow stares. Julian Hayes enters carrying his leather portfolio with the precision of a surgeon preparing for operation. Good morning. The 45-day period has expired. As of this moment, LHT officially declares Dalton Manufacturing in default. We are exercising our foreclosure rights under the security agreement. The words land like hammer blows. Arthur makes one final plea, his CEO voice cracking with desperation. Julian, you've worked with us for 7 years. Can't you convince LHT to extend the deadline? Just 30 more days? We're family, for God's sake. I represent LHT's interests exclusively. Those interests require immediate asset protection. Julian distributes foreclosure notices with methodical efficiency. Dalton Manufacturing will file Chapter 7 bankruptcy at 2 p.m. today. As the secured creditor, LHT stands first in line for asset recovery. The family stares at papers that transform their century-old legacy into legal jargon about debtor in possession and liquidation procedures. 4 generations of Dalton pride reduced to bankruptcy court. Filing numbers. Cynthia's voice breaks completely, her manufactured composure finally shattering. How did it come to this? We're family. We're blood relatives. Doesn't that mean anything anymore? I enter the conference room for the final time, my heels clicking against linoleum with measured precision. 4 pairs of eyes turn toward me with expressions ranging from hatred to bewilderment. I take the seat beside Julian Hayes and place my hands flat on the scarred table. Family? I ask, my voice devoid of the warmth they've never deserved. As I recall, Aunt Cynthia, you were very clear at Christmas. You said, and I quote, "A true family fortune should belong to true family, blood relatives, not outsiders." The silence is absolute. Griffin's mouth opens soundlessly. Felicity grips her chair arms until her knuckles whiten. Arthur's face cycles through confusion, recognition, and pure terror. You made your position clear. I continue, my words falling like winter rain. I've respected your wishes. The $90 million you considered mine illegitimately has been returned to its rightful place. LHT. Away from your family. I turn to Julian with the calm authority of someone who planned this moment for 7 years. Proceed with the bankruptcy filing. I'll see you at the auction. 3 months later, I sit in the gleaming boardroom of Summit Dynamics, 40 floors above Boston's financial district. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the harbor sparkles like scattered diamonds. As their newest board member, I review the integration proposal that will merge my acquired assets into their operations. The irony tastes sweeter than vintage champagne. The Dalton family lost their century-old company to their biggest rival, while I gained a 30% equity stake in the surviving business. Griffin's fraternity connections couldn't compete with $90 million in leverage. Summit CEO slides the final documentation across polished granite. The manufacturing division integration is seamless. Your plant manager recommendation proved excellent. My first executive decision had been simple. David Miller, whose 20 years of competent leadership survived every Griffin-inspired termination threat, now holds the Chief Operating Officer position for our new manufacturing division. Later that afternoon, David sits across from me in my new corner office. His weathered hands hold coffee like it might disappear. 20 years of watching incompetent family members threaten his livelihood left permanent worry lines around his eyes. "Miss Wright, I have to ask something." He sets down his cup carefully. "Why did you save the company when you could have just collected the debt and walked away?" I lean back in my leather chair, watching cargo ships navigate Boston Harbor below. 400 jobs matter more than family grudges, David. The company deserved better leadership than it was getting. His relief shows in the way his shoulders finally relax. Those people never appreciated what they had, always talking about family legacy while running the place into the ground. Legacy isn't inherited, David. It's earned through competence and respect for the people who do the real work. My reflection in the window shows a woman who no longer seeks approval from people incapable of offering respect. 30 years of being the grateful outsider, accepting scraps of conditional affection, ended with one Christmas dinner conversation. The adopted girl who desperately wanted to belong learned that belonging isn't given by blood relatives. It's chosen by people who value your contributions. My assistant's voice comes through the intercom. "Miss Wright, you have a visitor in the lobby. Cynthia Dalton is requesting a meeting." I consider the request for exactly 10 seconds. "Please escort Mrs. Dalton to the building exit. If she returns, notify security." Through my window, the city spreads like a circuit board beneath gathering clouds. Somewhere in those streets, Cynthia Dalton lives in a modest apartment near Fenway Park. Her Beacon Hill mansion sold 6 weeks after the bankruptcy to cover the personal guarantee shortfall. Her family fortune reduced to Social Security checks and bitter memories about ungrateful adopted relatives. Arthur's LinkedIn profile shows him listed as seeking new opportunities for the past 4 months. Griffin works nights stocking shelves at a suburban grocery store. The entitled prince who wanted to fire David Miller for sport now counts inventory until dawn. 6 months after the bankruptcy, my phone buzzes with a LinkedIn message from Felicity Dalton. She's working as a receptionist at a downtown law firm, her message carefully worded and apologetic, mentioning therapy sessions and personal growth revelations. I delete it without responding. Some bridges burn completely. Evening sunlight streams through my office windows as I review Summit Dynamics' quarterly reports. The Integrated Manufacturing Division shows record productivity under David's leadership. 400 workers kept their jobs through competent management, rather than family politics. Profit margins improved 20% when nepotism stopped driving personnel decisions. My phone displays 17 missed calls from blocked numbers. Arthur's desperate attempts at reconciliation, perhaps. Griffin calling about loan modifications that no longer exist. I turn off the device and open my laptop to draft an email to Julian Hayes about our Seattle acquisition opportunity. The last entry in my personal journal sits open beside my keyboard. Family isn't who shares your DNA. Family is who stands beside you when everything falls apart, who celebrates your success without resentment, who protects what matters to you. The Daltons taught me that blood can run cold, but chosen loyalty runs warm. They called me an outsider looking for family. They were wrong. I was family looking for people worthy of the name. Outside my window, Boston Harbor reflects the setting sun like molten copper. Tomorrow, Julian and I will discuss expanding westward. The manufacturing assets we acquired for $68 million now generate twice their previous revenue under professional management. The Daltons demanded blood family only. They got exactly what they asked for. LHT arrives at the bankruptcy auction as the secured creditor with legal priority. I don't spend a single new dollar. Credit bidding allows me to use the $90 million I'm already owed. I bid $68 million, an amount no competitor can match, acquiring all key assets free and clear. The $68 million is simply deducted from the total debt. Mathematical precision. Clean accounting. But the original debt was $90 million, which leaves $22 million outstanding. Arthur's face drains completely white when his bankruptcy attorney explains the personal guarantee consequences. The company's bankruptcy doesn't erase the remaining $22 million, because Arthur signed personal guarantees 7 years ago, in his desperation for survival. LHT is now legally entitled to pursue their personal assets, the Beacon Hill mansion, their cars, their savings accounts. Everything they own becomes fair game to satisfy the remaining debt. They haven't just lost the company, they've lost everything. Cynthia stares at the auction paperwork with glassy eyes. This can't be legal. There has to be some protection for families. There is, I reply, standing to collect my documents. It's called loyalty, gratitude, basic human decency. You chose to exclude me from your definition of family. Now you're experiencing the consequences of that choice. The courthouse steps are slick with last snow as I walk toward Julian's car. Behind me, the Dalton family huddles together for the last time as wealthy people. By tomorrow, they'll be ordinary citizens facing ordinary consequences. I slide into the passenger seat and check my phone. David Miller has already texted confirmation of his acceptance as Chief Operating Officer for the new manufacturing division. Where to? Julian asks, starting the engine. Summit Dynamics headquarters. We have a company to run. Through the windshield, I watch Arthur help Cynthia down the courthouse steps. Her pearls catch gray light one last time, before they disappear into their attorney's modest sedan. Blood relatives only, she said. Family fortunes for family blood. They got exactly what they asked for.